say my name wrong, and I just whatever. Moving on.
Nice. We were just discussing how I was going to butcher her name, so everybody knows how that's kind of what I do. So that's fine. All right, kids. Here's the intro, and I apologize for nothing. Call. Two men. One named Rich. That's me.
This is Jermaine. Just got off the toilet.
He's a foul man. This is the X's and O's of life.
Huh?
Yep. Sorry. You can run now if you'd like. That's fine. Completely get it. Yeah. So, for those that don't know, I converted this podcast into kind of two different things. So, originally, I was putting the regular feed along with the interviews in the same thing. I don't know if everyone digs the interviews. I don't know if everyone digs the regular show. So I figured, let's split it up. So I did. So there you go. So, I'm probably Rich. I'm not sure. I don't even know anymore. And this is some lady I found that was like hanging out, and I was like, "Hey, come record stuff with me." I think her name's I don't know. She can tell you. I don't know. This thing is going off the rails. I love it. So, this is the X's and O's Life, the interview portion thingy, and I have a kind of a podcast guru, I guess I would say. I mean, I may be touting you up, but sorry, but now you have a little watermark to lead up to, so there you go. And she said something super cool. Well, all right, let me walk that back. Maybe not super cool. Maybe in said situation, not super cool, but from an outsider point of view, it's like, ooh, we'll touch on that either. That's called a cliffhanger, guys. Yeah. So let's get into you. You know, what makes you you and what you do, and you know how you can make me semi-successful and me not jump off a bridge. That's the plan.
So my name is Alesia Galati, and I run a full-service podcast management agency. And so we tend to help business owners who are looking to grow their podcast, be super strategic with it. Most of them are looking to make some type of money, bringing their listeners and turning those listeners into potential leads for their businesses. So that's where I focus, where my team focuses. And we do everything from the content strategy all the way through to the marketing. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. Yeah. I started my first podcast in 2018. If we dial back though, I started listening to podcasts back in 2014, 2015. And just fell in love with the medium, mostly because there's only like 5 songs that they play on the radio. And I was really sick of listening to those 5 songs. And so I was like, look, I love learning. I'm a lifelong learner. And so podcast Stuff You Should Know was the very first podcast I listened to. And I was like, I get to learn stuff on the way to work. And then I'd get to work and I would tell all of my coworkers about this crazy thing that I learned about on my commute. And they were like, okay, Alesia. But that was my start into learning about podcasts and hearing it. And then in 2018 was like, all right, I'm going to do it. That was a terrible idea because I didn't really have an idea of what I was doing with my show. I learned a lot from it. So maybe it wasn't the worst idea, but definitely learned. But that podcast has since stopped. Then in late 2019, started a show with my sister called Two Sisters and a Cult, where we talked about cults. And then in 2020, I was like, I've been doing a little bit of side hustle stuff. I've launched 2 podcasts. The second one was quite a success. I wonder if I could do that for other people. And then jumped kind of head first into podcast management. So that is me.
Okay. Questions. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm assuming you got into the podcast game. Say it like it's a rap game. It's silly. You got into the podcast game because of your admiration of said podcasts?
Yeah, it was kind of this. I also had tried different mediums of creating content, right? So showing up on social media, doing live video, doing YouTube videos, writing blog posts. And I found that all of those didn't allow me to get anything done because they were so hard for me to like just create the thought and put it out there in a video or in a written way that was very structured. Whereas a podcast, I was able to be more myself and share really vulnerable stories or share top tips. And that felt really good to just be able to show up as me, not have to worry if I'm in my snuggie or not, and just do the thing. So that's why I really liked podcasting and why I turned to that medium.
It almost sounds like it was like pseudo cathartic for you. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. That's one thing that, especially with the cult podcast with my sister, um, I guess we could just jump right into that.
If you don't
We were
stop
gonna
giving
wait
that
a
away,
little
woman,
bit.
I'm telling you what.
Well, like, okay, so you said cathartic. Um, in 2019, my mom passed away from an overdose.
Oh.
And having grown up in a cult that was supposed to quote unquote help her get clean, and a
Oh.
program that was supposed to help her get clean that was 18 months long that ended up being 10 years of being in this program instead. And then her overdose, which obviously led to her passing away. My sister and I were like using the podcast as a way to process why, because we couldn't ask that question anymore. And so it was a really cathartic way for us to process our grief, really understand kind of the mind behind why people join cults. Like, screw the leaders. We don't need to, like, who cares about them? Like, but why do people join? What leads them to that point? And so, yeah, I have found that podcasting can be extremely cathartic for processing very deep feelings like grief or like childhood trauma.
Well, damn. I was hoping for a bit of a fun cult story. Now I feel like now I just want to go be sad. No, that's awful. That I'm so sorry. That I was actually I essentially was a drug transaction for my birth. So um wow. Yeah, that's sad to say a little bit. That was a drug transaction. Yikes. Anyway, um what so to kind of go a little backwards here. What was the first podcast about? Because you said that kind of, it's no longer a thing. So and you didn't really know what you were doing, like you said. So what was kind of your general premise, if you had one?
Yes. So if you think back to like the idea of, all right, business owners using their podcast to generate leads, that's always been something that's deep and something I've always wanted to do with a podcast. So that first one I was doing, there weren't a lot of podcasts for e-commerce businesses at the time. You're looking at 2018. Now there are a lot more, but there weren't then. And with a background in marketing and in supply chain and manufacturing, so that's what my corporate career was. I had a lot of knowledge on how I could support and help these small e-commerce businesses. So I was giving them marketing tricks, inventory, supply chain stuff, like all of those types of tips, tricks, strategies. And what I found that was, there were two reasons why I stopped. The first one being I didn't want to do that because I was doing it in my day job. I did not want to do that as a side job or as a side hustle either. And then the second reason was that I could not keep up with the consistency. And so I didn't have a workflow of like, all right, this is happening, then this is happening, then this is happening. I didn't plan ahead. And so a lot of those things led to, okay, that second podcast, how am I going to make sure that we show up the way that I would like us to show up? And then into working with clients, how to help them and support them in creating a workflow so that they don't feel overwhelmed when it comes to, seasonal things that happen in their lives where maybe they aren't at full capacity to show up for their podcast.
I think that's a pretty responsible, thing. I mean, the fact that you're like, yeah, look, I gotta pull the plug, man. I don't have it in me. Because I mean, I look at this whole thing and I tell most of the guests to come on here. I end up going down this road, but whatever. I treat this like a business. So I record like 5 or 6 times a week. It's silly. And I have a full-time job and 2 kids and a wife and 5 cats and a dog. Like, and this, when you first started off, it's a passion project, right? You're not making money. It just isn't a thing. Unless you just kind of stumble into it, then cool, great, wonderful. But generally speaking, you're not going to make money for a long time. You need to gain a following, and then things will start to happen. But it's hard to differentiate yourself from Tom, Dick, and Harry down there with what you're doing. But you did say though there weren't a lot of folks doing e-commerce, so you're like, hey, look, let's attempt to corner that market, but you just didn't. There's only so many hours, right? And you have your full-time gig. You have your full-time gig, and it's you can't. Yeah, I'm gonna call off work to go do the thing I'm not making money for. It's like,
Right.
yeah, you're special. You should not do this anymore because you don't know how to business. So it's so that's pretty cool that you had the wherewithal to say, okay, let me step back, let me get my ducks in a proverbial row and keep it moving. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's one of the main reasons why most podcasters, I think it's like 90% of people who start a podcast end up stopping. And the reason that I think a lot of that happens is because they don't realize how much effort and how much work goes into acquiring guests, having the conversations, doing the research, promoting, and then you've done the thing and you got to tell people about it, which is already hard, right? Like,
Right.
hey, I did this thing. Hey, mom, go listen. You know what I mean? Like getting other people to listen. And it just takes so much effort, which is why, very selfishly, I tend to work with people who already have established businesses. They already have established audiences, and they're looking to
Right.
add in that podcast as a additional way to connect with their audience. Also noting that most people who start podcasts, it's kind of just a pipe dream idea. And they're like, I think I could talk about this. Let's do this thing. And they jump in head first without doing a lot of that, like that research of, okay, is this something that people actually want to talk about? Is this something that people are interested in? For example, we had one client where they wanted to do a podcast on GMOs. And when we were doing the initial market research, we were like, there's a lot of podcast episodes on GMOs, but there's not a lot of podcasts, which means there's not a lot to be said at this time
Right.
about GMOs. You can only talk about them so much. So this makes sense to be more of a limited series. So you can still have the podcast, but hey, it's going to be 12 episodes, bookend it, and we're done. And so I think if you go into it like, it's not that you should never do it, it's that you should be more strategic, keeping in mind what your capacity is, and also what is it that people want.
I know because I've only been doing this since Easter, and I have three podcasts, and actually, funny enough, through Podmatch, I linked up with somebody. Now I'm a part of his podcast. So, like, the interview, this part of it has been a godsend. But collectively, I think I have like 75 episodes already. So just to put that in perspective, 6 months, 75 episodes. I'm not going to do math because I that's above my pay grade. But we've adapted and evolved throughout the whole thing. I think the really cool thing about us, what we do, it's very organic. And we'll bring up a topic. Like, we've been doing this for 7 years, just like talking and yapping and whatever. We're like, hey, why don't we record this?
Yeah.
And we'll come up with a few things we're going to talk about, but we don't talk about it till we get there. And I've learned cool things about him and vice versa. And I thought, I'm not saying we're cornering the market with that idea, but I think there's so many out there that are very formatted and very robotic. And yeah, we have gone through our bumps and learned on the way. But I think that's wouldn't say it's the best way, but it's the best way for me to kind of get better and listen to the wife and say, hey, that episode's bullshit. All right, fair enough. You got it. Let's not do that anymore. And just kind of adapt and evolve, because I think that's super hard for people to do. You get stuck in your lane and you're just like, no, this is my idea. I'm staying with it. And it's like, oh, you and all 2 of your downloads? Okay. You can't really do that. So I think it's cool that you're able to advise people, and it's smart, because you're like, look, I'm not trying to take on a project. That's like dating. I don't want someone with like the mom, the dad, and the grandpap issues. Come on, man. I don't have that to do. Let me look. You got a job, a car, and a house. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's do that. Let's call it a day. We're good. Let's see how this goes. But why take on more work than you really need to take on? That's, I hate to say it that way, but I mean, it makes sense. It's your business. You get to call the shots.
Yeah. I want to kind of reiterate what you said there, that it might not work for everyone, but you're doing what works for you. And I think that is so important. One thing that I say constantly, especially to clients when they're like, I'm behind the 8 ball. I don't think I have an episode for next week because of XYZ and life. And I'm feeling really overwhelmed, and also feeling a lot of blocks about even showing up because I'm feeling overwhelmed. And I'm like, okay, pause. Your mental health is always more important than your podcast. If you need to take a break, then take a break, right? Like, you can do that. It's okay. It's your podcast. You get to make the rules. There is not a like podcast guy who's going through and saying, oh, well, they didn't produce anything this week. That's a no. Like, nobody's doing that.
I used to look at that way a little bit. I used to feel bad if we had to miss an episode for XYZ, and I'm sitting like, oh man, all 3 of the people that listen to us are going to be pissed. And it's like, no, stop. Like, that does happen. Yes, you are an episodic thing, but that's the beautiful thing about social media and having here's the thing. That's a good problem to have. If you're worried about people being upset that your episode isn't coming out when it should be, that means you have a following. I feel like that's a good problem to have. And people are not going to jump ship after one oopsie doodle. And if they do, I don't want you here anyway.
Yes. Yeah. And that's where it's like important that if you are someone who, like me, who needs to be, all right, I got to show up every week. This is what I need in order to feel
Your internet's a
successful,
little
right?
choppy,
Like,
by the way.
oh, no.
Okay. You've been cutting in and out a little bit all time. Yeah. It just kind of cuts in a little bit, in and out a little bit, and then we miss a word or so, and like you freeze and it just hurries up. I don't know if like that's anything, but I just wanted to let you know.
Okay. Let's just make sure that everything.
You're like
off.
deer in the head, like your look is like, oh shit, what do we do? I love it so much.
Well, so my husband homeschools our kids, and they are currently watching the Fossil Day hoorah, because it's National Fossil Day today on
I did not
the
know
11th,
that. That's fine.
October 11th. So they are also on the internet. Hopefully, I got out of everything. Let's hope this works a little better.
No, you were all good. I just didn't know if it's something that you were aware of or what have you. That's all.
No, I heard you fine. So that's good at least. But yes, so I am someone who needs to have a perfect track record for my podcast. That's just how I feel. That's how I am. And that is my own like perception. Right. And so I knew that with summer and having kids and knowing that they're going to be off the walls, that I needed to batch record right over the early spring, late spring. And so I went crazy with recording as many podcast episodes as I could, and then getting those scheduled out to the tune of I have episodes through the end of October and have just started recording the new content for November, December. And while I did that, I know that a lot of people, they'll do that and then they'll get back into it and they're like, oh man, what in the world am I doing? I haven't recorded anything in forever. And so that's where I think having that like step by step, here's my checklist, here's what I know to do in every episode really helps. At least for people to be like, okay, where was I? What was I doing? What are we talking about?
Interesting, and it's weird because I think I go against the grain with that. Because I record on so our regular podcast I record Wednesday night and it's uploaded Thursday morning, and our two football ones we record on Tuesday nights and Saturday nights, and I do the interviews throughout the week. So yeah, that so this will be out. This will be out in the ether probably by like 5 tonight, and it's 1 o'clock right now. So there you go. I think a lot of people don't do it. I think more people go your route than my route, and I don't know if I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I'm not weird. I like being overwhelmed. And I'm not saying I'm overwhelmed, but I like having that pressure. Because I do believe in this. I think you can attest to this. If you're doing this for a hobby, then you're treating it as a hobby. If you're looking for this to be a job, this is what you want to be doing, then you're going to treat it as such. And
yeah,
I think having that importance wrapped around it, and just I think the people that are successful in this business are the ones that care. That, or they're just douches and do like the new trending stuff, and they're flashing the pans. Do what you want to do. You're paper thin from a moral compass standpoint. So whatever.
yeah.
I love doing this. It is like there might be a little crack in here. I don't know. It is. I didn't even know I wanted to do it. It's kind of happened, and that's why I think it's like a magical deal. So I think it's pretty nice that you have a company, you have a business, I should say, that these companies can go to and say, hey, let's utilize the 21st century kind of technology and how that all works and get more people on board with what we do. I mean, what made you get into that part of it? I mean, and I understand why you wanted to do the podcast part. Is it kind of the same general thing where that was always kind of a point of interest for you, and you just figured, hey, I'm good at this thing, let's parlay that into this?
So our kind of tagline is messages that matter. And so the clients that we take on are going to be those ones that are going to make an impact on their listeners, whether it is emotional, physical, business, some type of taking people from where they are to where they want to go. And so that is really, I think, what really drives us is to be able to stand behind and support those people who are creating things that are making a difference in people's lives. And that just keeping that core value in mind really helps us to be able to decide if a client is going to be a right fit for us or not, or if it's going to be like, I don't, let me send you to a competitor. Because honestly, it's not something we're interested in doing, but being able to have that space, I think really helps.
That brutal honesty is just so, it's just such a sexy business thing, because you think about it, it's like you got people that are just going to take you in just to take you in because, oh, money talks, I don't care. But you're just like, nah, kid, I'm out. It's not going to work. Like, you're not going to benefit from me. I'm surely ain't going to benefit from you. So it's kind of like, I'm all set, bub. Go to the other thingy with the thingy. And I think as a consumer, like, after you get over the weird, I got rejected for prom kind of moment there, after you get past that emotional thing, it's like, fair enough. Yeah, no, I'd rather they be upfront and honest and tell me, yeah, it's not a good fit. We're not going to charge you any money to waste your time, and we don't have time to waste on you. So
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty rare too. Like in any not even just the business aspect, just in literal like human to human life stuff. People will just kind of take your money and lie to you.
They do, yes. Another thing that I do tell clients and potential clients is like, this will not work if you're like me. So if you are someone who's like needs to have their hands in things or wants to have control over things, like that's not going to work because I like having control over the podcast. You show up, you record, you hand it off to us, and we handle it. Like I
Yeah.
want you to trust us. And so if you can't trust us, that's okay. I can send you to someone who you can bully and tell to do exactly how you want your show to be.
Right.
That's fine. But I mean, we're at 1,500 episodes that we have produced in the last 3 years. So we know what we're talking about. Let us
Little bit.
handle your stuff. So yes, kind of, just a little bit.
I think that's one of the reasons I never really kind of used those services personally because I want to do the stuff, but then I'm also like, oh man, I don't feel like doing that today. But then if I just let somebody else do it, I'm like, hey, come here. Don't, no, bad. And it's like, so let's kind of pivot a little bit because we brought it up earlier and, take a gander. Now that it's like you let the cat out of the bag a little bit, it's not, it's, I don't know. Once again, I'm not trying to make light of it or anything, but it's not as initially when you hear that word and then somebody's in it, you're like, oh my god, I want to hear all the things. But then you put the backstory around it. It's like, no, this isn't one of those stories that's going to be ha-has in it. So, with that being said, is that something that you're okay with actually talking about? Not for the rest of the episode. Just touch on it here a little bit.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay. So, you were brought. Yeah, were you like you were brought up in a cult? So when you mean like little baby Alesia, or like?
No, so I was 11
Okay.
and I am the oldest of 5. And so my youngest sibling was 9 months old when we joined. So he definitely like baby into it. But it was a women's program that was meant to help women who were in drug addiction, prostitution, sex work, all of those different things, to get clean, to find Jesus, etc.
A novel idea.
Yes, right. That's cool. And so it was an 18-month program, and we ended up being there for 10 years instead of just the 18 months. And what I've found through a lot of it is that it wasn't really about teaching the women to stand on their own. It was teaching them to live under a rules and like, this is the way it's supposed to be. And I'm the one, the leader. I'm the one who knows what's best for you instead of allowing these women to discover what it is that is best for them, right? And so it was a lot of that of like, oh, if you go out, then you're going to fall and you're going to fail and your kids are going to grow up XYZ, a lot of fear tactics like that. So yeah, that it definitely had an impact on how I now parent for sure. In encouraging my kids to challenge what I say is right, to encourage them to ask questions. Why is that okay? Encouraging them to think for themselves, which I know is like novel idea, but think for themselves and to come up with their own ideas and really, okay, so why is that like that? Why do you think? Instead of just asking me for the answer, like think about it yourself and come up with your own ideas. And then we can add science, we can look it up, things like that. So yeah, it was an interesting experience. And it's actually funny, not funny, but funny in that I see a lot of that same cult leader behavior in a lot of communities in the online space, which is really interesting to watch. We see this with one of the there's a voice actor who has had a lot of allegations against them and constantly plays the victim and has also done some really terrible things. But his following is like straight up cult.
Who are we talking
Like,
about?
I will not say, but it's like a romance author voice actor.
Oh,
Yeah, you might not know him.
nope.
But then yeah, so like his following would be like, "Oh, how dare you talk bad about him? How dare you do this?" And like they back him up like he's never done anything wrong in his life when there is proof that he has done some terrible terrible things. So, yeah, it's really interesting to see, and a lot of that comes from like people who want to feel belonging, right? Which we all want in some sense. We want to feel like we belong. And when we don't have that currently, we seek it out. And so when someone comes into our lives and makes us feel special, makes us feel like we could conquer the world, we tend to rely on them for a lot of insight into what is the world, which then leads to joining a cult.
God, there's only one person I'm thinking about that I can think of when you say that, and I'm not going to get political, but we'll kind of just leave that there. Okay, so I think we're on the same side there. Good deal. Yeah. Captain Orange over there. All right. Anywho, Jesus. So, whew, that sucks. So, let me ask you this: whatever happened to said cult?
So the person who was kind of the organization that was funding them, uh, the leader passed away. The leader of that organization passed away. It went down to his
Darn.
son, and then yeah, and then his son, not the cult, the organization that was funding it, um, they could not afford to keep the place open, and then they sold it. So that is, um, I since my mom passed away, I have not talked to anyone that was in a leadership or a leading position there. Obviously, there are other kids that I grew up with that I still talk to, people who were in it with me, but anyone who was in a leadership position, I do not converse with since my mom passed. A lot of the uh I'm sorry for your loss condolences were two-edged when my mom passed. It was like, I didn't agree with her choices and I'm sorry for your loss. Like, yeah, you can just go kick rocks. So yeah, I don't engage with any of them.
That's when you start stabbing people in the throat. Golly. Wow, the balls of people. Like, how could, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So they just sold it just to like, it's now like a Lowe's. Okay. Weird.
So it was like 100 acres of land.
Yeah, what
Like
was
when
it? It
I
was like
say
a
like
compound
cult,
deal or
yeah, so there was a big building on there, which was called the Lodge. Had multiple floors, multiple bedrooms, community bathrooms, the whole 9 yards. There was a big gym. There was the leader's kind of property, which was kind of off to the side. There were staff buildings that were off separate. And then we were homeschooled through them as well. So we
Ugh.
did not leave at all. Um, and it was maybe 150 people at a time would tend to about be there. Mostly kids though, because you're looking at women and their children where there's each woman has multiple kids.
Was there guy staff?
Mhm.
Yeah, I know how that goes then. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, there was the cult leader's husband, and then there were maybe 2 or 3, like, maintenance guys. They lived in a separate building as well.
Ugh. See, I mean, you know where my head's going here.
As
And
far as I know, nothing like that happened. It wasn't one of those kinds of cults, but
wink,
there was,
wink.
as far as I know, but there was, like,
Yeah.
spanking from people that were not your parents, kind of stuff. So that kind
Mm,
and
God,
manual
brainwashing is
labor as a form
oof.
of punishment. Yeah,
Mm.
a
Look, you
lot of
touched on it before. Like, first of all, brainwashing is a son of a bitch. My God, like this, and it's such a weird thing. Just from like a medical kind of standpoint, our bodies are so durable and amazing, but so fragile. Well, your brain's kind of the same deal. Like it is able to transcribe so much information on a daily basis, but then you get some creepy dude with a mustache, and he's like, "Hey, you like Kool-Aid? A little bit? Come here."
yeah.
And it's like, and it's at that vulnerable spot or that time that you need somebody, like you said, and you're like, "Hey, here's your helping hand, or here's your warm embrace," and then boom, and then you're
Yeah.
sitting there in a robe in a compound. Golly. I'm glad you got. I mean, well, can't say you got out. I mean, how did you leave? I guess if you don't mind me asking, was it post your mom or what?
So when I turned 18, they said that if I didn't go to this Bible college that was affiliated with them, then I would not be able to have a home to come back to. Which, as someone who started in this cult at 11 with no financial anything, no job experience, no nothing, um, is very intimidating. And so I went off to that college that was affiliated that was pretty much the same thing. Literally, you could not leave. You did not have any cell phone access. You did not have access to any of that stuff. A lot of Bible classes and church services and all that fun stuff. I say that sarcastically since you
Yeah, you
guys,
do.
if you can't see me. um, and then when it was so that was a 3-year thing. In my third year, I said, I got into some trouble. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm
What'd you
going
do? Oh
back
no no no
home.
no! What'd you do?
So you weren't allowed to like leave or have a boyfriend or any of that stuff. And I did. So yeah, they were
Shame on
not going to
you!
kick me
How
out.
dare you!
Right. They were not going to kick me out, but I was like, I'm going to leave before you can kick me out. And so that's what I did. Went back home, ended up working at the camp because, again, no life experience. Ended up working at the camp as a first, second, and third grade teacher, which was terrible. Absolutely hated that. That was not fun whatsoever. And then was like, I want to go to the local community college. Met my now husband at the local community college. And then around that time, my grandmother got sick. And my mom was like, look, I want to move back because this was in New Jersey. She said, I want to move back to New York to be close to my mom. Of course, the leader disagreed with her, but can't hold her hostage. Right. And so she was like, I'm going to go back. And so I was 21 at this point and was like, well, I'm going to move in with my boyfriend. And so that is how we left. And also being the oldest of 5 kids, I was kind of done taking care of my mom and my siblings and wanted some space to be able to kind of discover what it is I want out of life. And so the idea of staying in New Jersey and moving in with my now husband was a lot more of an option for me than going up to Syracuse, New York, and then just taking care of them.
So they just let you walk out. Interesting. So like, you just don't think that's a thing, but I guess maybe it's like the mental restraints are the thing that. Okay. Ooh, those dirty people. Oof. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but it sounds like you for being under whatever you want to call it and getting out and legitimately making something of yourself and doing the entrepreneurial thing, like that's people that grew up in a quote unquote normal environment can't do that. So you really you really are kind of omitting special magic aura deals here. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. When I left, I've always wanted to like make something of myself, do great. Also, give, now that I have kids, give them the experiences that I never got to have. Like my first big vacation was my honeymoon. I don't want that to be my kids' lives. Like, I want to be able to be like, hey, we are going to the beach this weekend and we're going to go look for sharks from sun up to sundown. Like, they're shark teeth. Like, that is
Oh,
something that, like, yeah, not sharks, shark teeth. And like go to the beach and do that. And we're gonna take a weekend here. We're gonna take a weekend there. And they want to go to South Dakota or something to watch like the running of the bison or the buffalo. I don't remember which, but we're gonna try and do
okay.
that, you know? So like being able to give them those
Right.
experiences. And so knowing, okay, I need to make good money to be able to do that and like raise them to be. And so that kind of is my driving force, but also noting that I'm going to be 45 and my kids are going to be out of the
Really?
house and I want to be able to do yes, I am. Yes. We had
Damn,
kids young.
girl. Good for
Um
you.
but like knowing that like 45, let's go. Like let's go live life. Let's go experience stuff knowing okay, we got to have goals and set
Right.
those goals and accomplish them. And so I just keep that kind of in my mind and that is really my driving force to do better, to be better. And also a lot of mental blocks of like, I don't think about a lot of that cult stuff. And my siblings will be like, hey, remember when that thing happened? And I'm like, nope,
Nope.
I really don't. So that also helps me kind of process to move forward.
Yeah, and you know what? Some people could look at that and say, "Hey, that's probably not the best way to go." But we said about the podcasting, it's what's right for you. If that works for you, then as long as there isn't any like detrimental shortcomings, which I don't. I mean, I've only known you for 41 minutes here, but you know, it seems like you have turned. I mean, for all intents and purposes, you've turned. Lemons and lemonade. You know what I mean? You know, you've kind of like, all right, I'm going to take the silver lining here, and we're going to aid this in shaping how I want to do this parenting and this life thing, and the other stuff we can just kind of keep it moving, and we'll deal with that when I'm dead, type of deal. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, fair enough. I mean, I don't think anybody can fault you on that. I mean, it's real easy to kind of throw those stones from outside, but it's like you don't know what I went through, man. Like you don't know what I saw, the feelings I harbor. I could be fine with it. You could be perfectly okay with everything that happened. You're just like, yeah, I'm just not really wanting to yap about it. It's all good, but I think a lot of people would look at that and say she's just pushing down all her feelings. It's like, and not sure how that affects you there, sweetness, but you got it. Thanks for caring.
Yeah. I think it's like a bit of categorization in my brain. Right. And so, like, I, especially when my kids were a lot younger, did a lot of processing of my childhood, a lot of processing of things and self-development and work and like I want to be this better person for my kids. I want to be this better person for myself. Like all of this stuff. So I've done the work. And so when it comes to okay, I have these goals to move forward, I need to if I stay focused on all of the bad stuff, right? Or all of the things that bothered me, there's no way I can move forward. There's no way I can do better. And so when I categorize that, it really helps me to be able to, okay, yes, we've worked through some of those things and now we're moving forward. So, like, for example, when my mom passed, I knew I don't really want to go to therapy because I don't want to get into my dad. And I know that's exactly what a therapist is going to do. They're going to have me in there for years talking about all the things with my mom and all the things with my dad. And I'm not ready to process my dad today. So we are just going to work with this kind of person to help support through grief. Because those are the emotions I'm feeling, and I need to be able to function to get to work, to make money, to support my family, period. And so that was one way of me compartmentalizing. All right, we'll work with this other stuff later. Right now, these are the big feelings. These are the things that are impacting my ability to live. And that's what I need help with. And so focusing on that rather than, and all these other things I need to work on.
Just deal with it when you're dead. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Just think about it when you're when you're hanging out in the coffin. You got time.
Yes.
So I guess just to sort of do like a shameless plug here for you. So if there are people listening that are doing business and they're kind of stagnant and they're kind of bored and they want to do something different, like why do they go to you? Why am I
Yeah.
choosing you over Mr. Crockpot? And I'm saying that because I'm looking at a crockpot.
So typically people come to us because they want both the strategy and the done for you, right? They don't just want to be able to say, all right, here is the stuff, have at it. They also want to say, does this make sense for my business? So it's a very custom strategy, very customized. All right, let's come up with these content, what I like to call content buckets. What are we talking about for your business? Is this aligned? Like, if you want to talk about your dog, cool. Does it tie back to the whole point of the podcast? And so those kinds of things and helping them be super strategic with their shows. So most podcast production companies, I would say 99% of them only do the production. You hand off the stuff and they do the work, but they're not offering that strategy and that how to grow, how to build. And so that's where we are very different.
Yeah, it's like you're paying them, but then you're also telling them how to make their own money. That's beautiful.
Yes. Exactly.
So I don't know if you want to name drop anything, but is there anybody noteworthy or company noteworthy that you have partnered with or worked with that, you know, you can point to and say, yeah, hey, I was a part of their building block here.
Yes. So one of them is a organization that helps C-suite level get on boards. So that is How Women Inspire is the podcast by How Women Lead. That is a nonprofit. And then there is Cosmic RX, which is hundreds and thousands of people in their community that is more on like astrology and understanding your birth chart and all of that fun stuff. If that's your jam. We did a limited series with I can't remember the name because it was last year and my brain doesn't remember stuff from last year, but they help with like principals in schools and teachers from a diversity standpoint and like really offering
Okay.
support, which is really cool. So when I say like messages that matter, it's not just like the people who are buying these programs. It's also some nonprofits that are doing really impactful work in the world
Nice.
as well. So those are some big ones, and also a lot of smaller ones that are, thousands strong with their audiences, but are getting DMs that say, I did what you said in your podcast, and this made a difference. And so that I feel like those excite me a little more because those are those like really intimate interactions that, yes, the other ones are making big moves, and that's great. But those small ones where someone says, this made a difference in my life, just
Right.
the like
That
stamp.
hits different.
Yeah.
Legitimately, the guy that I'm doing the podcasts with on Thursday, he's the one. He's like, dude, what do you not do video? I'm like, I don't really feel like. He's like, do video. Okay. And now we've done it, and it's not amazing, but we're at like almost 1,300 downloads on YouTube. And I'm like, hell yeah, man. That's
That's
this
awesome.
makes me not want to die. And it's funny because I think that a lot. I've always looked at the podcasting thing as everybody can eat. There's so much stuff to talk about. There is no monopolizing that needs to be a thing. You got something to say and you're mildly entertaining. Cool, people will listen to you. It's really that simple. It doesn't need to be any more complicated. You can have some kind of niche thing. Hey, stay in your lane, dude. Have fun. Do your thing. That's fine. I generally think a lot of people are looking for more entertainment stuff. Just kind of, I want to, how you watch a show and your main antagonist dies or something bad happens to him. You almost have like a visceral feeling. That's what I aim for. I want people to be a part of our lives and be, it just feels like kind of No, like a personalized connection. I guess I don't really have any other better way to put it.
Yeah.
Um,
And like if you think there's not there's too many podcasts or my idea is too niche or too narrow, there is a podcast about Pez.
for
Like the
real?
candy dispenser. There is a huge community of people who are very interested in collecting Pez. That is a podcast. There's a podcast about shoeing horses, the types of shoes to put on horses, the different like if you think no one's going to listen to this, just remember those two podcasts. Be like, "Yep, there's room for me. It's fine."
Look, man, I'm not trying to judge, but there's got to be better stuff to do than okay. Yeah, look, whatever. Fine, do you have fun? Like how do you talk for Pez for any amount of time?
I mean, it's not my
Wow,
thing, but I get it. Like you got that thing you really love, that thing you're really invested in, that thing that
it's
you
a
collect
passion
like
thing.
crazy.
It's
That's
like
cool.
we said, it's the passion thing. Wow.
Yep.
Well, and this is a bit of a selfish question, and we'll kind of skedaddle on this one here, but it also helps out anybody else that's listening. So, for maybe a startup or a growing podcast or anything like that, what are your words of wisdom that you'd be willing to give out without having to pay you?
Yeah. One, you can always listen to my podcast, and there's lots of words of wisdom there.
Wink,
Like I
wink.
give tons of information there, listeners to leads. But if you're looking to grow your podcast, there are two things that I highly suggest doing. One, being a guest on other people's podcasts. That is the quickest way to get more listeners, hands down. The second is be yourself. Like be as authentically, and I know authentic is a buzzword, but like be you. Share those stories, share your opinions, share what it is that makes you you instead of reading off of a script. Like get off script. Be a little goofy. You're gonna connect with someone. They're gonna be like, "Oh my god, me too." So those are my two tips that I think really can make an impact on growing your show, but also helping you connect with your audience better.
It's funny because you said, yeah, be yourself, and that kind of piggybacks off the idea of, hey, look, be a part. Like I want you to be a part of me. Be go on this weird journey. Let me be your weekly little like, what is Rich getting into this week? I don't know. Um, no, that's cool because I think that's hard for people. It's very interesting because there are people that are afraid to do this, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
why? You're just talking. But I guess maybe the worry of people judging them. It's like it's the internet.
Hmm.
You could be Jesus and you're gonna get judged. It doesn't matter. Like
Yes.
does
And
not
once
matter.
you've been judged, you've made it. You've officially made it. I remember when we got our first 1 star on the Cult podcast, and I was like, someone doesn't like us. Awesome. Because we are not for everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah. And that's being true to yourself. And I think that's one of the biggest important things because you can evolve and we've evolved a bunch of times throughout this whole 6 month thing, which doesn't seem like a long period of time, but when you're kind of a grassroots thing and you're funding everything yourself and doing everything yourself, if you still find time to adapt and listen to people and say, okay, I can take your advice, and then actually take it as well and say, no, you know what, that makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean, maybe I shouldn't do it that way, and not have an ego. That's oh man.
Yeah.
So you said you're still doing the one with your sister, or no? Is that done?
No, that is done. We found that talking about cults was extremely depressing. And
I was
so
gonna say, like, I thought it would have been.
we kind of got to a point where we had processed it. We understood why she joined the cult. And then we ended with sharing our own cult journey. And
Yeah,
then that was the wrap for that.
good.
But we
Kill it
still
till it's
get
dead.
hundreds of downloads every week. People still listen.
Well, I mean, look, it's a buzzy thing. It's an
Mhm.
interesting. You're Yeah, you may get that till the end of the time. That's kind of consistent revenue right there for you.
Yeah.
So let's do this. Plug all the things. Say all the words. Obviously, I put all the things in the. Actually, I don't put all the things. I'm pretty much going to put your website because I'm hoping everything is in there.
Yes.
Thank God. Because I'm still needing to build a website because I'm bad at life, so I got to do that part. Anyway, I digress. Plug all your stuff. I'll put it all in the show notes, and yeah, do the thing.
Yeah, wherever you're listening to this, you can go to Listeners to Leads. It should be on your podcast app. And then if you want to connect with me, send me a DM. Instagram's the best place for that. And then you can go to galatimedia.com for all of the work with us stuff.
I like it. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out, sincerely, and had no idea it was going to go that way. I thought it was going to be terrible. No, I didn't. But no, you threw that caveat of that word in there. I'm like, oh, well, that's
Yep.
all right. But I just appreciate you taking the time out and talking to my silly self, and you're welcome back anytime, and hopefully folks kind of latch on and give you all their monies and no money to me. I don't have kids to pay for anything.
Well, thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm very glad we connected.
Hey, me as well. And I will send all this to you later in the day. And got any parting words for me?
No, keep going. Keep doing the thing. Podcasting is hard, but you can do it.
Well, I figured once me and the wife get divorced, she can't take this from me. So that's the plan. Well, listen, you have a good rest of the day down in your neck of the woods and enjoy your not Christmas weather.
Thanks. Will
All
do.
right. Have fun finding shark teeth. Teeth? Shark teeth.
Teeth, I think. Yes, we'll do that. That's our weekend trip next month. That's what we plan on doing.
That is terrifying and awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.